Hello and welcome to the NW History Podcast. On today's podcast, I'm going to be having Malakith. I don't know how to say his N, but he's basically with the famous YouTuber who was around the community for a while. And he was in one regiment throughout his whole history, and he's basically going to give us a nice little talk here. And we're going to be having him on today. So, Malakith, I thank you for coming on, and it's an exciting thing, as I know you've done a lot in the European community. So, for all you guys clamoring for a European guest, we have finally got him on, and we finally have our European side now covered. It's not going to be the end, obviously, but we will have more coming along the road for the European community as well. So let's get right into it. So Malakith, I'm going to begin by throwing you another pretty easy one. This question is just, what was your first regiment, and can you tell us a little bit about how you found them?
Okay, so the one and only regiment I was ever in was the 77Y, which is a Russian-based regiment, obviously. I found them, they were just in a public server back in Mountain Musket when the community was tiny and it was just a little mod. Big line battles were 20v20.
What? 20v20?
Yeah, you were lucky if there was a single regiment that had more than 15 people. All of the regiments shared a single TeamSpeak, so if you wanted an event, you just jumped to that regiment's channel. It was a very different scenario.
What was that like? If I just I can imagine if I went on and there's only 20 people, and I would find that super thrilling. But what was the type of feeling you got when you first started playing the game?
So joining a public server, it was weird, as I think most people can appreciate. Public servers don't really give you the feel of what private servers do. And to start with, I actually bounced off the game. I was like, well, this is a bit odd and not what I was expecting. And then I can't remember how I found out about it, but I found out about the private regiment scene, and that there's events and there's matches and they play each other, and so I sort of just in a public server went, hey, anyone recruiting? 77Y replied. I went, okay, I'll join you then. And wow. That was it. No, it was no more formal than that.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting, I'm going to tell you from my perspective when I first joined a regiment. I go on NW, I hop on the first server that I see. I'm lagging, getting 5 FPS. Cannonballs are flying in the air, killing everyone. And then I'm in this town. Actually, there wasn't cannonballs back. It was just the normal I think it was NA1 kind of Napoleonic roleplay. But anyway, so I'm going on, and then I thought regiments were actually really hard to get into. And this was around 2014, right? And I'm oh my gosh, I really hope I can get in a regiment. I don't think I'm good enough because I just got in the. So did you kind of have that mindset? What was it like when you were thinking about you first joined the regiment? How did they induct you, kind
of? I mean, it was literally you just asked, and someone went, yeah, okay, and then
yeah, okay.
You just played with them in the public server. No one really had their own servers. There was a few, but the community just wasn't big enough. I mean, it was just a tiny mod for Mount and Blade. I don't even remember if you had cannons properly. There definitely wasn't anything like NW's got with the full unit spread.
So when you joined the 77Y, what was it like at first? What were you kind of doing? Why'd you stay active in the community?
I mean, to start with, it was just as it started growing as a community. So initially it was 15-man lines, and it was line battles, and that was new and interesting because no other game had done that. I can't think of any other game that does that even now, other than I'll say clones, but you know what I mean, similar.
Yeah, Hold Fast or stuff like that.
Well, one's in a similar vein. So no other game had sort of done that. And then because the growth was happening, people were starting to experiment with new things. It was oh, we can have skirmishes because the line battles are big enough now. We've got up to 30 people. So it was I like skirmishing. I might try and see if I can sort of get involved in the new skirmisher detachment of the 77Y. And at the time, the guy that was sort of tasked with setting it up, I think he was a sergeant, he just vanished. And at the time, I was his only recruit to the detachment.
Oh.
And the leader was like, well, that's a waste of time. We're not having that then. And I managed to convince him if I could get new people to join it as opposed to pinching members from the line, would I be able to run it?
Uh-huh.
And I just spent, I don't know, a week, I think. I managed to get 10 people, which when your regiment's only 15 to start with was, pretty significant.
Wow. Oh,
Um,
wow. So I just got a question. Were you like big into YouTube yet at that point or not?
no, I hadn't done any YouTube at all at this point.
Oh,
This was
really?
this was prior all of my YouTube stuff.
Oh, wow. All right. And
Um,
you just so how much effort did you put in getting those first? Because I can
I,
tell you from my experience, I can go on and on about recruiting and the pain in the ass that is.
I mean, it was just as the mod was growing, and it was the summer, so I had nothing better to do with my time.
Uh-huh.
So it was just sit in the servers. As soon as you see someone's name without a tag on it, just start talking to them. Like, hey, you want to come and join in this, this regiment thing? And then loads of them were like, oh no, that lining up, that sounds far too formal. At which point I'm like, well, we're skirmishers, we don't do that. And then,
Ooh.
like, oh yeah, and then that was sort of it.
So that sounds really dandy. And so when you're, that seems so new. So it was easier because it was like a new game. Do you think it made it easier for recruiting?
Yeah, I think it was. I think they just released Russia, which was like the patch update to the mod that added the Russian faction. So I think that started getting more people interested, and I think they may have put in some new features at the same time. I mean, we're talking so long ago. I'm working off hazy memories here. So
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sure.
that's fine. I appreciate you going at least. And I can relate back to so I started in the game kind of later in NW. It was like about like 2014-ish, right? And I was not per se well, that's when I started, but then when I made my own regiment was about I think like 2016, March 6th. And recruiting was the most difficult thing ever because like I literally went onto dead Steam groups of probably like 77 what no I never went onto EU Steam groups, but I just go and pilfer through Steam groups, add people on Steam, and just try to get anyone to join because it was so difficult and hard. So it's interesting to see that at the beginning that it was kind of different in that.
Yeah, it was because everyone was in the same TeamSpeak as well. It was, you knew every regiment in the community for sort of EU, for example, because you were all in. You just look up the channels and go, "Oh, those guys are quite active," and so you could sort of see if a regiment was dying off and the members were looking to leave. You could sort of pinch them almost, which was particularly frowned upon. But if
it's like poaching.
if the 10-man regiment's gone down to 4 and they can't even get in an event because they can't have enough people, it kind of happens.
Yeah, it just they die. It's like natural selection.
Yeah,
survival of the fittest. There you go. Now who was the leader of the 77Y?
Oh man,
Wasn't it as tier?
No. So when I started, it was I can't remember his name. I think it was Heinkel. Then it changed to Bjarsted. Then it was Sevchenko. Then it was me. Then it was Aztir.
Gosh, oh my goodness, that's a lot of changes, and the regiment was still around. So now let's go all the way back to the skirmisher detachment again. See, like the growth of that. Can you tell us the story of kind of how that started to grow once you got the?
I think it just grew because we were one of the few regiments that had enough people to do it, and it was different, and so that kind of attracted people that wanted some that weren't quite 100% sold on the line battling, line infantry side of things.
Uh-huh.
And I remember, well, it's been a common thing all the way through, and I'm sure some people would disagree with me, but lots of regiments used the riflemen because they were more accurate to shoot from longer range because they were safer but could get the same hit ratio at longer range. Whereas we tended to use them more, we'll fight at the same range and just get more kills. So it was a much more aggressive sort of skirmisher style, which I think also dragged a few people across because they weren't too keen on sitting a mile away on a hill and hoping.
Yeah, that's not fun. Not fun to end up. So you must have ranked up in the regiment pretty fast then if you were able to secure yourself that position.
Yeah, so I got sergeant almost immediately, and that was the highest rank in the skirmishes for quite a while until the regiment as a whole grew big enough that they decided they needed more rank differentiation. At which point the lieutenant came in for skirmishers. It was always only ever 15, 20 people, sort of just, you need some spare because not everyone can show up to every event.
Was that just the skirmishers or the regiment?
Yeah, sorry, that was just the skirmishers.
How much was the line at this point, if you could?
They would be running 2 lines of 15 in an event roughly.
Oh
So,
wow, so the 77Y got big.
well, this was possibly just before the transition to NW.
Okay, so was the 77Y one of the bigger communities on?
Yeah, in the EU it was for probably at that time it was probably the 91st or the one of the largest, along with the 51st.
Yeah, I'm gonna really make you stretch your memory. Was that 91st Tavington? I think his name was. Is that him,
I'm
or
not
was
sure
that
if
someone else?
he was running it at the time.
Because I know the
But
91st was another like super
yeah,
house.
Tavington was running it in NW definitely, and it was the same regiment. But I'm not sure if he was leading it at that time back in Mountain Musket.
So when the transition happened to NW, like what happened? Because you have to pay for NW. So did that mean anybody like? How'd that affect the community?
So it came out, and everyone sort of that had the money spare bought it to give it a try. And then enough people liked it that most of the regiment just transitioned. You did end up losing the people that just didn't want to or couldn't afford it. We found it was mostly the best melee players from Mountain Musket didn't transition because NW's melee was different. They couldn't get on with the new melee system and weren't as good, so they preferred to stay where they were good, because obviously if you're good at something, you generally tend to keep doing it.
Wow, so that's kind of funny. And then, so when you now transferred, what was the effects in terms of the growth in the community? Did the community in the long term grow or get smaller after?
Oh, the community in the long term ballooned massively. I mean, I started the videos just before the transition. I think I've got 3 or 4 Mountain Musket videos, and then it transitioned to Napoleonic Wars. But the community boomed. I mean, the regiment size itself went up 4 or 5 times over. There's a screenshot somewhere.
Cool, man.
There's a screenshot somewhere in my computer files somewhere where a training session we had 167 members.
Oh, gee.
And bearing in mind that not everyone that's in the regiment can attend every training session because life happens. So there was a lot more than that. Like we were getting 30 new applicants a week, which was a pain to process during the summer. A lot of them were American based, so as soon as the summer ended, they all disappeared because they all went back to school and things. But
so
it's
what happened then with the YouTube channel? Did that was that like a need to be filled? Like once you started to post it, lots of people started to watch it, or like how'd that work?
So it started because of people in the regiment, but the Mountain Musket Napoleonic thing wasn't what started it. It was, what was it that started? It was Kerbal Space Program and Crusader Kings, because they were complex games and they didn't understand how to do things. And it was like, how can I show you how to do things to just people you play with? You're trying to explain it to your friends. And so that sort of started. Then I was like, oh, why don't I just record this thing we're doing every week anyway? And it started off slowly, like most YouTube channels, and then it grows and it snowballs eventually if the people want to watch it. It was a niche. It's a niche game. There weren't many people recording it at the time, and it's a very different game to try and watch. You know, what other games even remotely look like an NW event?
Yeah, that's for sure. It's definitely an odd type of game if you first look at it. Like I know sometimes I showed my friends one at school, and they were just like, "What is that autistic movement with your mouse?" Because I do a lot of melee, so I do a lot of the swings and stuff.
Yeah.
And so my screen looks really weird to watch it. So my friends always would mock me, right? So they would raise their hands above their head like they were holding a bayonet, and then like move their hands up and down and their body back and forth, and like mocking, pretending. It was really funny.
I think that one of the things that helped me grow was the size of the regiment in the first place meant that we had a lot of coordination. So you'd have 2 or 3 units of line infantry with their commanders, the skirmishers with their commander, the cannon with their commander, and we'd have all of them in like an officers using channel commander in TeamSpeak for anyone who's aware of that. So you'd hear the officers talking amongst each other, working together, and then they would talk to their individual lines, and you'd see a lot of coordination. I think that was possibly a sort of a unique perspective you wouldn't usually get elsewhere, just because of the number of people that we could call on, fortunately.
That's epic. Oh my gosh. When you how did the leadership work? Because at this point, how when it was that big, where were you in the hierarchy?
So